Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, a translation by J.R.R. Tolkien. Part 1. When the siege and the assault had ceased at Troy, and the fortress fell in flame to firebrands and ashes, the traitor who the contrivance of treason were fashioned was tried for his treachery. The most true upon earth, it was Aeneas, the noble and his renowned kindred, who then laid under them lands, and lords became of well nigh all the wealth in the Western Isles. When royal Romulus to Rome his road had taken, in great pomp and pride, he peopled it first, and named it with his own name that yet now it bears. Trius went to Tuscany in towns founded, Langobarд in Lombardy uplifted halls, and far over the French flood Felix Brutus on many a broad bank and bay Britain established full fair, where strange things, strife and sadness, at whiles in the land did fare, and each other grief and gladness oft fast have followed there. And when fair Britain was founded by this famous lord, bold men were bred there who in battle rejoiced, and many a time that betayed they troubles aroused. In this domain more marvels have by men been seen than in any other that I know of since that olden time. But of all that here abode in Britain as kings, even was Arthur most honoured, as I have heard men tell. Wherefore a marvel among men I mean to recall, a sight strange to see some men I have held it. One of the wildest adventures of the wonders of Arthur. If you listen to this lay but a little while now, I will tell it once as told town I have heard it told, as it is fixed and fettered, in story brave and bold, thus linked and truly lettered, as was loved in this land of old. This king lay at Camelot at Christmas tide, with many a lovely lord, lieges most noble. Indeed of the table round all those tried brethren, amid merriment unmatched and mirth without care, they tourneyed many a time the trusty knights, and joust full joyously these gentle lords. Then to the court they came, to carols to play, for there the feast was unfailing full 15 days, with all meats and all mirth that men could devise. Such gladness and gaiety was glorious to hear, din of voices by day and dancing by night. All happiness at the highest in halls and in the bowers, had the lords and the ladies, such as they loved most dearly. With all the bliss of this world they abode together, the knights most renowned after the name of Christ, and the ladies most lovely that ever life enjoyed. And he, the king most courteous, who that court possessed, for all that folks so fair did in the first estate abide, under heaven the first in fame, their king most high in pride, it would now be hard to name a troop in war so tried. While New Year was yet another that yester eve had arrived, that day double dainties on the dais were served, when the king was there come with his courtiers to the hall, and the chanting of the choir in the chapel had ended. With loud clamour and cries both clerks and laymen, Noel announced anew, and named it full often. Then nobles ran anon with New Year gifts. Hansels they shouted, and handed them out. Competed for those presents in playful debate. Ladies laughed loudly, though they lost the game, and he that won was not woeful, as many will be believed. All this merriment they made, till their meat was served, then they washed, and manly went to their seats. Ever the highest for the worthiest, as was held to be best. Queen Guinevere, the gay was with grace in the midst of the adorned dais set. Dearly it was arranged. Finest silk at her sides, a ceiling above her of true tissue of Toulouse, and tapestries of Frisia, though embroidered and bound with the brightest gems, one might prove and appraise to purchase the coin any day. The loveliest lady there, on them glanced with eyes of grey, that he found ever one more fair, in sooth might no man say. But Arthur would not eat until all were served, his youth made so merry with the moods of a boy. He liked light-hearted life, so loved he the less either long to be lying or long to be seated. So worked on him his young blood and wayward brain, and another rule moreover was his reasons beside, that in pride he had appointed, it pleased him not to eat upon festivals so fair, ere he had first apprised of some strange story or stirring adventure, or some moving marvel that he might believe in of noble men, knighthood, or new adventures, or a challenger should come a champion seeking to join him in jousting, in jeopardy to set his life against life, each allowing the other the favour of fortune. Where she fairer to him, this was the king's custom, wherever his court was holden, at each famous feast among his fair company and hall. So his face doth proud appear, and he stands up stout and tall, all young in the new year, much mirth makes withal. Thus there stands up straight the stern king himself, talking before the high table of trifles courtly. There good Gawain was set at Guinevere's side, with Agravain and Le Duemain on the other side seated, both their lords' sisters' sons, loyal-hearted knights. Bishop Baldwin had the honour of aboard service, and Owain Uren's son ate beside him. These dined on the dais and daintily fared, and many a royal lord below at the long tables. Then forth came the first course with fanfare of trumpets, on which many bright banners bravely were hanging. Noise of drums, and a new and the noble pipes warbling wild and keen, wakened their music, so that many hearts rose high hearing their playing. Then forth was brought a feast, fare of the noblest, multitude of fresh meats on so many dishes, that free places were few in front of the people, to set the silver things full of soups on cloths so white. Each lord of his liking there, without lack took with delight, 12 plates to every pair, good beer and wine all bright. Now of their service I will say nothing more, for you are all well aware that no want would there be. Another noise that was new drawn near on a sudden, so that their lord might have leave at last to take food. For hardly had the music but a moment ended, and the first course in the court, as was custom, been served, when there passed through the portals a perilous horseman, the mightiest on middle earth in measure of height, from his gorge to his girdle so great and so square, and his loins and his limbs so long and so huge, that half a troll upon earth I trow, that he was but the largest man alive, at least I declare him, and yet the seemliest for his size that could sit on a horse. For forth in back and in breast his body was grim, both his paunch and his waist were properly slight, and all his features followed his fashion so gay and mode. For at that hue men gaped aghast, in his face and form that showed, as a fayman fell he passed, and green all over glowed. All of green were they made, both garments and man, a coat tight and close that clung to his sides, a rich robe above it all arrayed within with fur finely trimmed, showing fair fringes of handsome ermine gay, as his hood was also, that was lifted from his locks and laid on his shoulders, and trim hose tight drawn of tincture alike, that clung to his calves, and clear spurs below, of bright gold on silk broideries banded most richly, though unshod were his shanks, for shoeless he rode, and verily all this vesture was of a verdure clear, both the bars on his belts, and bright stones besides, that were richly arranged on his array so fair, set on himself and on his saddle upon silk fabrics. It would be too hard to rehearse one half of the trifles that were embroidered upon them, that with the birds and with the flies in a gay glory of green, and ever gold in the midst of the pendants of his palfrey, his proud crupper of his mulleins, and all the metals, to say more, were enamelled, even the stirrups that he stood in were stained of the same, and his saddle-bows in suit, and their sumptuous skirts, which ever glimmered and glinted, all with green jewels. Even the horse that held him in hue was of the same, I tell, A green horse great and thick, a stallion stiff to quell, in embroidered bridle quick, he matched his master well. Very gay was this great man, guised all in green, and the hair of his head with his horse's accord. Fair flapping locks enfolded his shoulders, a big beard like a bush over his breast hanging, that with the handsome hair of his head falling, was sharp shorn to an edge just short of his elbows, so that the half his arms under it were hid, as it were in a king's cabodoche that encloses his neck. The name of that mighty horse was much of the same sort, well curled and all combed, with many curious knots woven in with gold wire about the wondrous green, ever a strand of the hair and a string of the gold. The tail and the top lock were twined all to match, and both bound with a band of brilliant green, with dear jewels bedight to the dock's ending, and twists then on top was a tight knotted knot, on which many burnished bells of bright gold jingled. Such a moment on middle-earth or man to ride him has never beheld in that hall, with eyes ere that time for there. His glance was as lightning bright, so did all that saw him swear, no man would have the might, they thought, his elbows to bear. And yet he had not a helm, nor a hauberk either, not a pisain, not a plate that was proper to arms, not a shield, not a shaft, for shock or for blow, but in his one hand he held a holly bundle, that was its greatest in greenery when groves are leafless, and an axe in the other, ugly and monstrous, a ruthless weapon all right for one in rhyme to describe. The head was as large and as long as an ell-wand, a branch of green steel and of beaten gold, the bit burnished bright and broad at the edge, as well shaped for shearing as sharp razors. The stem was a stout staff, by which sternly he gripped it, all bound with iron about it to the base of the handle, and engraven in green in graceful patterns. Lapped round the lanyard that was lashed to the head, and down the length of the haft was looped many times, and tassels of price were tied there in plenty, to bosses of the bright green, braided most richly. Such was he that now hastened in, the hall entering, pressing forward to the dais. No peril he feared, to none gave he greeting, gazing above them, and the first word he winged, "Now where is," he said, "the governor of this gathering? For gladly I would on the same set my sight, and with himself now talk in town." On the courtiers he cast his eye, and rolled it up and down. He stopped and stared to espy who there had most renown. They looked for a while on that lord gazing, for every man marvelled that it could mean indeed, the horseman and horse such a hue should come by, as to grow green as the grass, and greener it seemed, then green enamel on gold glowing far brighter. All stared that stood there, and stole up nearer, watching him and wondering what in the world he would do, for many marvels they had seen, but to match this nothing. Wherefore a phantom and fey-magic folk there thought it, and so to answer little eager was there any of those knights, and astounded at his stern voice stone still, they sat there, in swooning silence through that solemn chamber, as if all had dropped into a dream, so died their voices away. Not only I deemed for dread, but of some 'twas their courtly way, to allow their lord and head to the guest his word to say. Then Arthur before the high dais beheld this wonder, and freely with fair words, for fearless was he ever, saluted him, saying, "Lord, to this lodging thou art welcome. The head of this household Arthur my name is. Alight, as thou lovest me, and linger, pray thee. And what may thy wish be in while we shall learn?" "Nay, so help me," quoth the horseman, "he that on high is crowned, to pass any time in this place was no part of my errand. But since thy praise, prince, so proud are uplifted, and thy castle and courtiers are accounted the best, the stoutest in steel gear that on steeds may ride, most eager and honourable of this earth's people, valiant to vie within other virtuous sports, and here is knighthood renowned, as is noised in my ears. 'Tis that has fetched me hither, by my faith, at this time. You may believe by this branch that I am bearing here, that I pass as one in peace, no peril seeking. For had I set forth to fight in fashion of war, I have a hauberk at home, and a helm also, a shield, and a sharp spear shining brightly, and other weapons to wield too, as I well believe. But since I crave for no combat, my clothes are softer. Yet, if thou should be so bold, as abroad is published, thou wilt grant of thy goodness the game that I ask for by right. Then Arthur answered there, and said, Sir noble knight, if battle thou seek thus bear, thou fail not here to fight. Nay, I wish for no warfare, on my word I tell thee. Hereabouts on these benches but beardless children. Where I hast been armour on a high charger, there is no man here to match me, their might is so feeble, and so I crave in this court only a Christmas pastime, since it is Yule and a New Year, and you are young here and merry. If any so hardy in this house here holds that he is, if so bold be his blood, or his brain be so wild, that he stoutly dare strike one stroke for another, then I will give him as my gift this guisarme, costly this axe. 'Tis heavy enough to handle as he pleases, and I will abide the first brunt, here bare as I sit. If any fellow be so fierce as my faith to test, here let him haste to me and lay hold of this weapon. I hand it over forever. He can have it as his own, and I will stand a stroke from him, stock still on this floor, provided thou lay down this law, that I may deliver him another, claim I, and yet a respite I'll allow, till a year and a day go by. Come quick, and let's see now, if any here dare reply. If he astounded them at first, yet stiller were then, and all the household in the hall, both high men and low. The man on his mount moved in his saddle, and rudely his red eyes he rolled about, bent his bristling brows all brilliantly green, and swept around his beard to see who would rise. When none in converse would accost him, he coughed then loudly, stretched himself haughtily, and straightway exclaimed, What, is this Arthur's house? Said he thereupon, the rumours of which runs through realms unnumbered. Where now is your haughtiness and your high conquests, your fierceness and fell mood, and your fine boasting? Now are the revels and the royalty of the round table overwhelmed by a word by one man spoken? For all blench now abashed ere a blow is offered. With that he laughed so loud their lord was angered. The blood shot from shame into his shining cheeks and faith. As wroth as a wind he grew, so all did in that place. Then near to the stoutest man drew the king of a fearless race, and said, Marry, good man, 'tis madness thou askest, and since folly thou hast sought, thou deservest to find it. I know no lord that is alarmed by thy loud words here. Give me now thy guisarme, in God's name, sir, and I will bring thee to the blessing thou hast begged to receive. Quick, then he came to him, and caught it from his hand. Then the lordly man loftily alighted on foot. Now Arthur holds his axe, and the haft grasping sternly he stirs it about. His stroke, considering the stout man before him, there stood his full height, higher than any in that house, by a head and yet more. With stern face as he stood, he stroked at his beard, and with expression impassive he pulled down his coat, no more disturbed or distressed at the strength of his blows, than if someone as he sat and served him a drink of wine. From besides the queen Gawain to the king did then incline, I implore with prayer plain, that this match should now be mine.